Well, I grew up here in Vancouver, British Columbia, in the suburbs. My parents were immigrants, so I wasn't able to play ice hockey, but they loved watching it on television, so I became a fan right away. But due to the financial stress of it all and enrolling your child into the sport, I had to find a way to get involved in the sport simply by viewing. So in high school, we had a film and television class, which allowed me to pick up a camera and mic for the first time. And instead of doing high school news, like the happenings around the school, I'd go to the gym during lunch and film floor hockey intramurals. And I'd convince my television teacher, look, we got to put a highlight reel together. These guys are doing great things. So that's kind of how it all started off. I'd spend all these lunch hours just packing together hockey stories, and I was accepted into the CBC's News Day program in high school as well. So I was able to get a first look into how newsrooms and television studios operate. So that really allowed me to pursue broadcasting and journalism right away, just having that firsthand experience, which I think is so incredibly imperative. From there, I went to broadcasting school, graduated, and technically you're supposed to get an internship in your second year, but I bugged one of the producers at Hockey Night in Canada's Punjabi edition, like, please let me press a button. Let me just watch at the end of my first year. So it went from being very observant, like, oh my God, I'm really here, to, okay, let me press a couple more buttons in my next season. And now let me tell a story. So I started on the digital end of things and eventually got into storytelling on Hockey Night in Canada's Punjabi edition. In terms of my past experiences, I think being a woman in media comes with a different set of circumstances for the most part. And when you come from a racialized background, you feel a little bit odd trying to navigate, okay, where do I fit in this space? Do I fit in? Do I carve out my own opportunity? At the start, there was so much uncertainty. I always felt like I was overstepping if I was asking for more. I always felt like I had to not give my male counterparts, but, any little opportunity there, I was like, oh no, I can't take this type of thing, right? And it isn't until like a couple of years in, I was like, okay, I need to start creating a space for not only myself, but for the next woman in line, because I don't want her to feel the way I did, that there isn't a space for her or a seat at the table. But luckily, I've been fortunate enough to have fantastic male advocates in my life, from my high school teacher to my producers here and my colleagues, that, I've been able to feel comfortable at Hockey Night Punjabi, do my thing. They trust the process. So yeah, it started with a lot of uncertainty, and there's still uncertainty, don't get me wrong, but having wonderful advocates around me and leaning in when I need to has been so valuable in terms of my progress. First and foremost, we need to have basic understandings of what it means to be racialized in the sports media industry, what it means to be a woman in the sports and media industry, just focusing in on that as an example. And then once you're able to have a full understanding or a thoughtful understanding of each, you're able to not only combine them, but you're able to understand the nuances, how I can how I can be an effective leader, how I could make sure my talent or my behind the scenes crew is able to get the most out of their opportunity or their work, and they're able to feel comfortable and be, the best version of themselves. So I think you would be able to combine them once you really have a thoughtful, deep understanding of the both. And it doesn't just come from listening to somebody talking about it. It comes down to applying what you learned. Last week, we saw what happened with the NCAA women's athletes, right? It was something that the disparity between what was the men's athletes were able to have and versus the women's it was nauseating for the most part for a lot of people. And they turn to social media to hold, these these people accountable for their lack of inaction. So that's one way of what accountability could mean, right? That's like a huge example. But daily accountability is having a social responsibility as a human being, and understanding my perspective and my opinion isn't the only one in the room. And once you're able to have an understanding of what a social responsibility looks like to you, you're able to not only hold yourself accountable, but hold the people in front of you accountable. And in terms of leaders, um, I think accountability looks like someone who is able to be a thoughtful listener and enact change from what they've heard and the perspectives they've learned about. So accountability means a whole lot of things to me. And I think social responsibility is something that everybody should have if they want to hold themselves accountable and others. This is a term that I've heard thrown around all my life. Matter of fact, someone said it to me a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't think they realized what they were saying. They said, "We don't have anybody that checks that box." So diversity isn't having somebody that checks that box. I'm going to use myself as an example. 8 years ago, I didn't know how to speak Punjabi. I didn't know anything about my Punjabi roots. I didn't grow up around South Asian people. I stayed away. I wanted to be white adjacent, just so I didn't, feel like I was the odd one out. My mom, if she brought in Punjabi food to my elementary or middle school lunch hour, I would starve myself because I didn't want the room smelling like garlic and onions. Right? So if you were to employ the Amrit who lived all of those experiences and chose not to change and said Amrit is a representative of the Punjabi community, that would be a lie. Diversity and hiring people who are diverse is hiring people who have been entrenched in the community, who have taken the time to learn about the community, who understand the nuances, who understand the experiences, so that sports media is able to have an accurate representation of, what diversity looks like. It isn't about checking a box. It's about employing people who have a true understanding of what diversity is. Thankfully, I've changed. I've learned the language. I do daily newscasts. I love the music. I'm learning about the culture. I'm able to speak now. I've put that effort in. But if you were to employ that same girl, I would be doing everybody a disservice. So diversity ain't about checking the boxes. It's about thoughtfully employing people. Representation. Representation matters, sister. Yeah. Again, growing up, I didn't have any role models. I loved Kate Burness. I loved Christine Simpson, but being them, found it like a wild dream until I was able to get those tools and the equipment and the resources and the mentors to help me navigate. But hey, maybe if I had somebody there that kind of looked like me, I would have felt maybe perhaps more confident. I perhaps would have not wasted so many years, but so much time second guessing myself. So I think that's why representation matters. I've spoken to kids, I've spoken to women. A month ago, I was speaking to a young girl out in Connecticut. She's half Punjabi, native, and Mexican. She was afraid to say her middle name because it's Kamari. She would always use her white middle name because she was afraid people would pick on her. But until I told her about, my story with anglicizing my name my entire life and taking it back and owning it, she opened up to me on Zoom and said, my middle name is Kamari, and I wasn't comfortable saying that until now. And that's what representation is. Like, why representation matters, little examples like that, building up people's self-esteem. It's so important because I can only be the best version of myself in a workroom if my colleagues are their best versions as well. And it's about helping people and being kind, being empathetic and understanding and helping the next one in line. We always use that term, having a seat at the table. Give a woman a seat at the table. Give a diverse representative a seat at the table. What if there's several tables? Would that hurt? What if the room was bigger? Would that hurt? No, it would make us stronger, and diversity is Canada's strength. So we need to start leaning in on it. But first and foremost, that comes with a true understanding of what that means. And me talking about it and me learning about it isn't going to do anything. You learning about it isn't going to do much. It's white Canada learning about it and being open to these ideas that's going to be able to help, because if I look around, the majority of the corporate leaders I know are white. And until they're able to understand what accountability, diversity, and inclusion means and what it looks like from a thoughtful perspective and what it could mean for our organizations across the board, across Canada, we're not going to be able to reach that potential that we can, unearth. So I think it starts with having a willingness to put the effort in, to learn. And then you'll be able to enact all types of change. Not about checking a box, as we discussed. It's about the willingness to learn, right? Because who knows, if you were practicing Punjabi or French or whatever it may be 8 years ago, you would probably be a better Punjabi speaker than myself, right? So it's not about checking a box. It's about employing thoughtfully. And I think corporate Canada or just media industry leaders can do that.